You think cheap food today means fast food and frozen dinners? Think again. Our grandparents fed entire families for pennies with meals so hearty and satisfying, they put modern budget cooking to shame. Let's dig into 60 cheap vintage meals we stupidly stopped making and deeply regret. Hard-boiled eggs with toast provided complete protein in a form that seniors could prepare in advance and eat throughout the week. A dozen eggs cost roughly 40 cents and could be boiled all at once, then stored in the refrigerator for quick lunches. The preparation was foolproof. Place eggs in water, bring to a boil, cover and remove from heat, then peel when ready to eat. Served on buttered toast with salt and pepper, this lunch felt substantial without requiring cooking skill. Some seniors mashed the eggs with a fork, while others sliced them neatly across the toast. The combination delivered protein, fat, and carbohydrates in balanced proportions. For those living alone, preparing eggs ahead meant lunch could be ready in minutes on busy days. The shells protected cooked eggs from absorbing refrigerator odors. This simple lunch sustained countless seniors who appreciated that nutrition didn't require complexity. Sugar sandwiches were childhood treats disguised as meals during years when candy was unaffordable and sweetness came from whatever the pantry offered. Soft, white bread was spread with butter, then sprinkled generously with white sugar that sparkled like tiny crystals against the yellow fat. The combination created a simple pleasure that satisfied sweet cravings without requiring expensive ingredients. Children ate these after school, their eyes lighting up at something that felt like dessert but cost almost nothing. The butter melted slightly from the bread's warmth, creating pockets where sugar dissolved into sweet slurry. Parents made these knowing a little sweetness could brighten difficult days when money was tight. The sandwich required no cooking and could be assembled by the smallest hands in the household. Seniors remember begging for these as rewards for chores, not realizing their parents were stretching resources creatively. What seemed like indulgence was actually survival cooking dressed up as celebration. Buttered noodles with parsley was the simple side dish that grandmothers could prepare in the time it took to boil water and drain pasta, yet it complemented nearly every holiday main course. Egg noodles were cooked until tender, drained, then tossed immediately with butter that melted into every crevice and a generous handful of chopped fresh parsley. The parsley added color and freshness that brightened the rich buttery coating, while a sprinkle of salt and pepper brought the simple flavors together. Some grandmothers added a squeeze of lemon juice for brightness or a dusting of Parmesan cheese for depth, while others kept the dish pure and simple. Buttered noodles provided neutral ground on plates crowded with strongly flavored holiday foods, giving palates a place to rest between bites. Children often ate them plain, while adults appreciated how they absorbed gravies and sauces from other dishes. Sweet puddings were beloved desserts that disappeared when butchers stopped saving the hard fat from around beef kidneys. This firm white fat created puddings with texture no other ingredient could match. Moist, rich, and substantial enough to serve as complete meals. Steamed for hours in cloth-wrapped basins, sweet puddings emerged glossy and dense, whether filled with dried fruit for Christmas or encasing meat in gravy for weeknight suppers. The fat melted slowly during cooking, basting the pudding from within and creating tender crumb. Vegetable shortening manufacturers convinced home cooks that their products were cleaner substitutes, but results were never the same. Sweet's unique crystalline structure created lightness that imitations couldn't replicate. Butchers stopped saving sweet when demand disappeared, and the knowledge of preparing it faded from common practice. Today, only specialty shops carry sweet, and the puddings that defined British American home cooking survive mainly in heritage cookbooks. Bread and warm milk represented the most elemental breakfast possible, requiring nothing but 2 ingredients and patience. Thick bread slices were broken into pieces, placed in a bowl, then covered with milk gently warmed until steam rose from its surface. The milk slowly softened bread, creating a meal half solid and half liquid. Some added sugar or cinnamon for sweetness, while others preferred it plain. This breakfast cost nearly nothing and could be prepared even when mobility was limited. Seniors with dentures found it easy to eat, the softened bread requiring almost no chewing. Warm milk soothed stomachs and promoted sleep for those who struggled with insomnia. During times when eggs were luxury items, Bread and warm milk kept elderly folks fed without straining meager budgets. The dish carried memories of childhood sickbeds when mothers served the same simple combination. This breakfast has essentially vanished from American tables, too humble even for nostalgia, yet it once sustained millions through difficult times. Another really easy way to enjoy your greens without breaking the bank or subjecting yourself to something that tastes awful was creamed spinach. You'll notice that most family recipes that classify as vintage often made some use of cream, and that was just a sign of the times back then. Especially after the war and when the economy had settled, a lot of people started to spam cream wherever they could. Of course, that also meant they would include cheese, and this dish isn't any exception. It was a great way to include spinach into your diet for the children, though, and that's probably why grandmas were known for having this recipe. They always had tricky little ways to get you to eat everything the doctor ordered without it feeling like a chore. You could even order some of this at diners, though there was no guarantee that the quality would be up to par. It was pretty hard to compete with homemade cooking back in the day, especially when your chef was an experienced one like your grandmother. Cream cheese and olive sandwiches brought a touch of elegance to solo lunches, combining creamy richness with briny punctuation in every bite. The preparation involved spreading softened cream cheese on white bread, then pressing sliced green olives into the surface before adding the top slice. For seniors living alone, this sandwich felt slightly fancy without requiring expensive ingredients or complicated technique. The cream cheese provided protein and fat while the olives added flavor that elevated the combination beyond expectations. Ladies who remembered tea parties often made these as treats connecting present meals to pleasant memories. The ingredients kept well in refrigerators, with a block of cream cheese lasting through multiple lunches and a jar of olives providing weeks of use. Some variations added pimento or chopped celery, though the classic version needed nothing more. At roughly 15 cents per sandwich, this seemed like affordable indulgence. The cream cheese and olive combination has largely faded from memory. Mock chicken salad sandwiches fooled taste buds during years when real chicken was too expensive for everyday meals. Canned tuna or cooked white beans were mashed and seasoned with poultry seasoning, celery, mayonnaise, and onion to mimic chicken salad's flavor. The result was surprisingly convincing, the seasoning creating familiar taste while the base provided protein at a fraction of chicken's cost. Housewives learned this trick during the Depression and wartime rationing, passing the technique to daughters who continued using it when budgets were tight. The sandwich filled lunch boxes and appeared at church potlucks where no one questioned whether it contained real chicken. Children ate it happily, never knowing they weren't eating actual poultry. The beans or tuna provided complete protein while costing pennies compared to chicken. Seniors remember mock chicken salad as clever cooking, the kind of resourcefulness that kept families fed with dignity. Three-bean salad was the make-ahead side dish that grandmothers stirred together from canned beans and a tangy dressing that improved with time in the refrigerator. Green beans, wax beans, and kidney beans were drained and combined with sliced onion rings, then dressed with a mixture of oil, vinegar, sugar, and seasonings. The salad needed to marinate for at least an hour but could sit for days, the beans absorbing the sweet-sour dressing while retaining their firmness. Its colors, green, pale yellow, and deep red, looked festive on holiday tables without any special arrangement. Some grandmothers added diced celery or green pepper for extra crunch, while others kept to the classic three-bean formula that gave the dish its name. Three-bean salad traveled well to potlucks and kept perfectly on buffet tables, making it the reliable choice for cooks who needed something they could prepare well in advance. Sourdough bread sustained civilizations for millennia before commercial yeast manufacturers convinced bakers that wild fermentation was unreliable and old-fashioned. Every household maintained a starter, a living culture of wild yeasts and bacteria that transformed flour and water into tangy, complex bread. Starters were named, fed daily, and passed through families like precious heirlooms. The bread they produced had depth commercial yeast couldn't match, with chewy crusts and flavors developing over long fermentation. Fleischmann's and Red Star changed everything by selling standardized yeast that worked in hours, marketing speed while home economists taught that sourdough was temperamental. Bakers abandoned their starters, and wild yeasts that had adapted to specific kitchens over decades died out. The knowledge of maintaining sourdough became rare, surviving mainly among artisan bakers. Commercial bread became soft and dependent on additives. What every grandmother knew, that real bread takes time, became specialized knowledge. Tomato gravy on toast brought tangy comfort to seniors who transformed canned tomatoes into something elegant. Bacon drippings or butter were heated, flour stirred in for roux, then canned tomatoes added and cooked until thickened into rosy gravy. Seasoned with salt, pepper, and a pinch of sugar to balance acidity, the gravy was ladled over toasted bread. The combination was savory, slightly sweet, and deeply satisfying in ways plain toast could never achieve. This breakfast cost pennies, since canned tomatoes were cheap and shelf-stable. Seniors could make gravy in minutes using one skillet, and leftovers kept well for reheating. The soft, sauce-soaked toast was easy to eat for those with dental troubles. In Southern and Appalachian communities, tomato gravy carried memories of mothers and grandmothers who served it when money was scarce. This breakfast has vanished from American tables, considered too humble for modern tastes. Yet it once provided genuine comfort. Hot tomato soup with saltines represented perhaps the most iconic simple lunch for seniors living alone, combining warmth, flavor, and affordability in a single bowl. Campbell's condensed soup cost roughly 12 cents per can and stretched to serve one generously when mixed with water or milk. The soup heated quickly on the stovetop, filling the kitchen with familiar aromas that signaled lunchtime. Saltine crackers floated on top or accompanied the bowl, their salty crunch providing textural contrast to the smooth, tangy soup. For those eating alone, this lunch offered psychological comfort alongside physical nourishment since the warm bowl felt like care and attention. The soup's smooth texture went down easily for those with dental concerns. A sleeve of crackers lasted weeks, making them economical pantry staples. This pairing sustained generations of seniors through quiet lunchtimes, requiring minimal effort. Though soup cans remain on shelves, the ritual of crackers floating in tomato soup has largely faded from daily practice. Sardine sandwiches delivered complete protein and essential fats to families who couldn't afford fresh fish or expensive meats during lean times. Small tins of sardines packed in oil sat on pantry shelves, ready to become instant meals whenever hunger called. The tiny fish were mashed onto bread with a fork, their salty, oily richness spreading easily. Some families added sliced onion or a squeeze of lemon to cut through the fishiness. The flavor was bold and unmistakably oceanic, filling kitchens with a distinctive aroma. A single tin could feed 2 people when stretched with plenty of bread, making sardines remarkably economical. The calcium from soft, edible bones provided nutrition that growing children desperately needed. Sardine sandwiches appeared in factory lunch pails and school bags throughout working-class America. Seniors remember their fathers eating these after long shifts. The tin opened with a key that peeled back the lid. The sandwich carried honest nourishment, tasting better than its humble reputation suggested. Quick corn relish brought tangy sweetness and crunch to holiday tables through a recipe that required nothing more than opening jars and stirring ingredients together. Grandmothers combined canned corn with diced pimientos, chopped green peppers, minced onion, and a simple dressing of vinegar, sugar, and celery seed. The relish came together in minutes, but tasted like something that had simmered and developed flavors for hours. Its bright yellow color, studded with red and green, made it look festive without any special effort, while its sweet, sour flavor complemented everything from turkey to ham to roast beef. Some families served corn relish as a side dish in small bowls, while others spooned it directly onto meat as a condiment. The recipe traveled well, making it perfect for potlucks and family gatherings where everyone brought a dish to share. Quick corn relish embodied the practical wisdom of grandmothers who knew that impressive results didn't require impressive effort. Homemade vinegar was a continuous process in farmhouse kitchens before Heinz standardized acidity and convinced Americans that only factory-produced vinegar was safe. Families maintained vinegar mothers, gelatinous cultures that transformed wine, cider, or alcoholic liquids into tangy vinegar over weeks of fermentation. These mothers were shared among neighbors, passed through generations, and treated as valuable assets. The resulting vinegars carried complex flavors: apple cider that tasted of autumn orchards, wine vinegar with grape undertones, malt vinegar with toasty depth. Commercial companies marketed standardization, implying homemade versions might harbor dangerous bacteria or produce inconsistent results. Their products were cheap, uniform, and utterly lacking character. The vinegar mothers died when families stopped feeding them, and the knowledge of maintaining them passed from practice. Today, artisan vinegars command premium prices for what every household once produced from kitchen scraps and thyme. Warmed-over biscuits with honey gave new life to yesterday's baking for seniors who never wasted bread. Day-old biscuits were split and placed cut side down in a warm skillet with butter, toasting until bottoms crisped, while insides warmed through. Drizzled with honey, these revived biscuits tasted nearly as good as fresh, crispy bottoms, adding texture the original lacked. This breakfast cost nothing extra since biscuits were already made and honey lasted months. Seniors could bake batches once weekly, knowing each one would find its purpose. The combination of crispy exterior, soft interior, and sweet honey created layers of pleasure. Warming biscuits required only minutes and minimal cleanup. Honey provided quick energy while biscuits delivered carbohydrates sustaining through morning. This practice has disappeared as fresh bread became cheap. But seniors once understood that yesterday's baking deserved respect and creative revival rather than the trash bin. Starting with the iconic Southern-style collard greens, were often made with meat, onions, and some basic seasonings like salt, pepper, and red pepper flakes. Sounds like a mouthful already, right? Well, it was one delicious mouthful, as all you needed to tie in. The whole flavor was just some vinegar and hot sauce, so it was pretty basic pantry stuff that almost every household had laying around. Every bite was really smoky and savory, but the best part of this dish is that it makes those otherwise chewy and dense greens pretty tender, so they end up going amazing with the smoked meat. Texturally and taste-wise, it's a pretty good dish, and it's definitely one of the better excuses out there to get some much-needed vegetables into your diet. Collard greens have actually been used like that throughout the history of the South, whether it's at a soul food-themed community dinner, families getting through the Depression, or just grandmothers making greens lovingly for their grandkids. It's a great way to spice up an otherwise boring vegetable, and for what it's worth, you stay pretty full after eating them. The first time I tried some of these greens, I was surprised at how I didn't feel hungry afterwards for hours, even though you'd think you'd at least crave a snack after. Peanut butter on crackers served as the no-nonsense lunch that required absolutely nothing beyond opening a jar and a sleeve of saltines. For seniors living alone, this combination provided protein, fat, and carbohydrates in a form needing no refrigeration, no cooking, and no cleanup beyond wiping a knife. The peanut butter's richness satisfied hunger in ways that plain crackers never could, while the salt enhanced the nutty sweetness. A jar of peanut butter cost roughly 40 cents and lasted weeks, making it one of the most economical protein sources available. The crackers stayed fresh in their wax paper sleeves, ready whenever appetite struck. This wasn't a meal that impressed anyone, but it kept energy levels stable through afternoon hours. Many seniors ate this combination while reading or watching television, appreciating that it could be consumed without sitting at a table. Though simple to the point of seeming inadequate, peanut butter on crackers sustained countless quiet lunchtimes. Liverwurst sandwiches delivered iron-rich nutrition in a spreadable form that European immigrants introduced to American working-class tables. The soft, pinkish-gray meat spread easily onto bread, its flavor deeply savory with unmistakable liver notes that people either loved or couldn't tolerate. Topped with mustard, sliced onion, or pickles, liverwurst provided complete protein at prices far below fresh meat. German and Eastern European families brought liverwurst traditions to America, where it became a deli staple and lunchbox regular. The spread kept well under refrigeration, and a little went far, making it economical for large families. Children grew up eating liverwurst without realizing they were consuming organ meat, finding the mild flavor approachable. Factory workers carried these sandwiches knowing they'd provide sustained energy through long shifts. Seniors remember liverwurst as everyday food, nothing fancy but reliably filling. The sandwich proved that immigrant food traditions enriched American tables. Stuffed celery stalks were the appetizer side dish hybrid that grandmothers arranged on relish trays, their hollow channels filled with cheese spreads that guests scooped out with satisfying crunches. The preparation took mere minutes. Wash and trim celery into manageable lengths, then pipe or spread softened cream cheese mixed with whatever additions the family preferred. Pimiento cheese was popular, as were versions with blue cheese crumbles, chopped olives, or crispy bacon bits folded into the cream cheese base. Children loved the celery boats filled with peanut butter, while adults preferred more sophisticated combinations with herbs and spices. The stalks could be prepared hours ahead, covered with damp paper towels to prevent drying, then arranged on platters just before guests arrived. Stuffed celery represented the relish tray era when no holiday table was complete without an assortment of pickles, olives, and vegetable preparations that kept appetites occupied while the main meal finished cooking. Rendered bacon fat cooking was standard practice before the edible oil industry convinced the public that seed oils were healthier. Every farmhouse kept a coffee can beside the stove where bacon drippings were carefully saved after each breakfast. This golden fat became the foundation of countless dishes. Fried eggs sliding across its surface, green beans sautéed until silky, cornbread enriched with smoky depth. The flavor was irreplaceable, adding richness no vegetable oil could match. Wesson and Mazola launched campaigns in the 1960s demonizing animal fats while promoting corn and soybean oils as heart-healthy choices. Home economists funded by these companies taught a generation that bacon grease was poison. The truth emerged decades later. Those polyunsaturated oils oxidized when heated, creating compounds far more harmful than stable saturated fats. By then, the bacon grease crocks had been thrown away, and the knowledge of seasoning cast iron with animal fat had faded from memory entirely. Poached egg on toast delivered elegant protein without requiring butter or oil for cooking, stretching resources for seniors watching pennies. Water was brought to gentle simmer, an egg slipped carefully into swirling liquid and cooked until the white set firm around still runny yolk. The egg was lifted with a slotted spoon and placed atop buttered toast. Breaking the yolk released golden richness soaking into bread below. This breakfast required skill and attention, giving seniors something to master and take pride in. The technique used no cooking fat, making it healthier and cheaper than fried eggs. A single egg on toast provided complete protein and sustained energy. Seniors valued the civilized presentation, feeling that even simple breakfast deserved care. The combination of crispy toast, silky white, and liquid yolk created textures making each bite interesting. Poached eggs appeared in diners and home kitchens alike, proof that elegance required no wealth, only patience. Sometimes the best dishes don't even need to be rooted in experimental creativity or good tried and tested comfort. Sometimes just the dumbest thing, like baking it one more time, works way better than anyone would expect. That's how we got things like twice-baked potatoes. And let me tell you, this is a potato lover's Vegas. It'll definitely have you feeling like you're living in the lap of luxury, not because it's a fine dining, haute cuisine culinary experience, but because it's just a plate of food that tastes extraordinarily good. You take baked potatoes, scoop them out, mash them with butter, cheese, chives, or sour cream, then stuff them right back and bake them again. The best part is that the skin doesn't go to waste, because once you scoop them out that first time, you get to stuff them back into the skins. First and foremost, a steakhouse classic, people started making it as a common afternoon lunch during the Depression and World War eras, where the economy meant that it was probably better to invest in potatoes rather than expect veal for dinner. Canned salmon patties transformed affordable pantry protein into crispy, satisfying lunch fare that seniors could prepare in small batches. A single can of pink salmon, costing roughly 30 cents, provided enough fish for several patties when mixed with crushed crackers, egg, and minced onion. The mixture was shaped into rounds and fried in oil until golden brown on both sides. For seniors living alone, salmon patties offered the advantage of being made fresh in whatever quantity was needed, since the canned fish kept indefinitely. 2 patties served between bread or alongside vegetables made a complete lunch, providing protein and satisfaction. The recipe required no precise measurements and forgave substitutions, making it accessible for those who rarely cooked elaborate meals. Many seniors learned to make these patties during the Depression and carried the habit into retirement. The soft bones in canned salmon provided valuable calcium. Though canned salmon still fills shelves, the art of patty making has largely disappeared. Vienna sausage sandwiches transformed small canned sausages into quick meals that children and adults devoured during the mid-20th century. The tiny, pale sausages came packed in broth, soft enough to eat cold from the can or sliced lengthwise onto bread. Their mild, slightly smoky flavor appealed to picky eaters, while providing protein costing less than fresh meat. Mothers appreciated how cans stored indefinitely in pantries, ready for emergencies or unexpected mouths to feed. The sausages were mashed with a fork or sliced thin, then layered on bread with mustard or mayonnaise. Some families added onions or pickles for crunch. The sandwich assembled in minutes without cooking, perfect for hot summer days when lighting the stove meant heating the entire house. Children often asked for these specifically, finding the small sausages more appealing than mysterious lunch meats. Seniors remember raiding pantries for Vienna sausage cans as after-school snacks. The cans represented affordable, satisfying, protein-rich meals. Jellied cranberry sauce straight from the can remained the nostalgic favorite that many families preferred over fancier preparations, its ridged cylinder sliced into perfect rounds. Grandmothers who understood their families knew that some traditions shouldn't be tampered with, and for many households, that meant the distinctive whoosh and plop of cranberry sauce leaving its can. The sauce was sliced into rounds approximately half an inch thick, then overlapped on a serving plate in a neat row that showed off the ridged impressions from the can. Some families preferred the sauce broken up with a fork, while others considered the intact rounds essential to proper holiday presentation. The sweet tart flavor cut through rich turkey and gravy, providing the acidic contrast that made heavy meals more balanced. Children often ate the cranberry sauce plain, savoring its jelly-like texture and concentrated berry sweetness. This humble canned sauce proved that sometimes tradition mattered more than sophistication. Real buttermilk was the tangy liquid left after churning butter, prized for baking and drinking before dairy companies replaced it with artificially cultured skim milk. Traditional buttermilk had richness from residual cream and complex flavor from bacteria that developed during butter making. It made biscuits impossibly tender, pancakes fluffy, and fried chicken crispy through its acidic tenderizing action. Farm families drank it cold on summer afternoons, appreciating its refreshing tartness. Commercial dairies found they could simulate buttermilk by adding cultures to skim milk, creating a thinner product that cost less. They stopped selling true buttermilk entirely, making the original unavailable except to those who churned their own butter. Recipes developed for real buttermilk produced different results with the substitute, often failing entirely. The knowledge of what buttermilk actually was, a byproduct of butter making, disappeared. Today, even experienced bakers don't realize they're using imitation. Oatmeal with molasses delivered iron-rich sweetness to seniors who understood simple ingredients could provide powerful nutrition. Old-fashioned oats were simmered slowly with salt until creamy, then topped with generous blackstrap molasses. The molasses sank into oatmeal, creating dark swirls tasting of caramel and minerals. Unlike refined sugar, molasses contained iron, calcium, and potassium, nutrients valuable for elderly bodies. A jar cost little and lasted months, more economical than expensive maple syrup. Seniors could prepare oatmeal on the smallest burner, cooking enough for days and reheating portions each morning. The combination stuck to ribs, providing sustained energy through morning activities. The slightly bitter edge of blackstrap balanced bland oatmeal, creating complexity from simplicity. For seniors on fixed incomes, this breakfast represented affordable self-care, warmth, and nourishment without requiring wealth. Oatmeal with molasses has largely disappeared as sugary instant varieties took over. Sardines on toast carried an honest simplicity that seniors living alone appreciated for both nutrition and economy. A small tin of sardines, often purchased for less than 20 cents, provided complete protein and enough substance for a satisfying midday meal. The preparation required nothing more than opening the can, arranging the fish on buttered toast, and adding perhaps a squeeze of lemon juice. The sardines came packed in oil, tomato sauce, or mustard, each variety offering different flavor profiles for minimal cost. Many seniors kept tins stacked in their pantries, knowing this lunch could be assembled in under 5 minutes without heating anything beyond the toast. The fish's salty richness paired perfectly with soft white bread, creating a combination that filled the stomach without elaborate cooking. For those watching pennies stretch across fixed incomes, sardines represented remarkable value. This humble lunch reminded many of simpler times when canned fish was considered perfectly respectable fare. Egg and olive sandwiches combined two affordable ingredients into surprisingly sophisticated fare that graced ladies' luncheons and church gatherings. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped fine and mixed with sliced green olives, mayonnaise, and mustard. The combination created filling with complex flavors, the eggs providing richness while olives added briny punch. Spread between slices of soft white bread, sometimes with crusts removed for elegance, these sandwiches appeared at tea parties throughout mid-century America. The olives, bought cheaply in jars, stretched affordable eggs into something that tasted elaborate. Women took pride in their egg and olive mixture, adjusting proportions to family preference. Children sometimes found the olives strange, but adults appreciated the Mediterranean notes brightening ordinary egg salad. The sandwich represented economy dressed up for company, proving hospitality didn't require expensive ingredients. Seniors remember these as party food, the kind served when impressing guests mattered. Creamed pearl onions brought old-world elegance to American Christmas tables through a preparation so simple it bordered on effortless yet tasted utterly luxurious. Grandmothers relied on jars of pre-peeled pearl onions that eliminated the tedious work of blanching and skinning dozens of tiny bulbs by hand. The onions were drained and warmed in a quick cream sauce made from butter, flour, and milk whisked together until smooth and thickened. A pinch of nutmeg, the secret ingredient that distinguished good creamed onions from ordinary, added warmth without announcing its presence. The finished dish was silky and mild, the sweet onions suspended in sauce that coated each one in creamy richness. Children who found raw onions too sharp often discovered they loved these gentle, butter-soft morsels, swimming in their mild sauce. Creamed pearl onions represented the quiet sophistication of mid-century holiday cooking, where simplicity and convenience met elegance on every table. Liver oil tonics were standard medicine cabinet items before synthetic vitamins convinced Americans that pills could replace whole food nutrition. Mothers administered spoonfuls of this strong-tasting oil to children daily, providing vitamins A and D, along with omega-3 fatty acids essential for brain development. The oil came from actual cod livers, cold-pressed to preserve nutrients that heat extraction destroyed. Children grimaced at the fishy taste, but grew strong on nutrition that modern diets often lack. Pharmaceutical companies marketed synthetic vitamins as cleaner and more precise, without the challenging flavor of real cod liver oil. Their pills were cheaper to produce and easier to sell, especially when combined with candy flavors. The knowledge of why cod liver oil mattered, its unique combination of fat-soluble vitamins, faded as pills replaced whole foods. Today, vitamin D deficiency is epidemic while cod liver oil sits forgotten. The medicine that built generations became obscure. Stewed prunes served as breakfast and gentle medicine for seniors who understood regularity mattered as much as flavor. Dried prunes were simmered in water with sugar until plump, releasing natural sweetness into thick, dark syrup. The fruit became tender enough to eat with a spoon, and the cooking liquid turned almost like sauce. Seniors ate these warm from bowls, sometimes with a splash of cream, or simply spooned up the sweet prune juice. Natural laxative properties made this breakfast valuable for elderly digestive systems needing encouragement. Dried prunes cost little and lasted months without refrigeration, practical for fixed incomes. A handful could be stewed in minutes on a small burner. The taste was deeply sweet with caramel undertones from slow cooking. For seniors living alone, stewed prunes represented self-care, requiring minimal effort, but delivering maximum benefit. This breakfast has nearly vanished from modern tables, replaced by supplements lacking the warmth and flavor of the original fruit preparation. I know some dishes in America's history really take you for a spin, because either they're doing too much or they're just experimental for the sake of it. But this one actually worked more often than not. Pineapple casserole, yeah, I know. Cue the booze for a second. Hear me out. You think of this as a pretty bad combination, right? I mean, we've gotten pretty used to the idea of pineapple and ham or pineapple pizza, especially since they've gotten so popular on social media. But what about extending that concept to some other dishes? Who says the only things that can have pineapples are pizzas and sandwiches? At least, that was the idea behind this dish when people first started trying it around. It got a name for itself by being a really common choice for potlucks, especially in Hawaii, but it was also really beloved in the South because the chilling and refreshing pineapple plus the super sweet and crunchy butter crackers topped with cheese and sugar were a unique mix. No other dish was really offering this flavor profile back in the day. Bouillon with crackers provided warmth and comfort when appetites were small, but something hot seemed necessary. Those little cubes dissolved in boiling water to create a steaming cup of broth that cost mere pennies, yet delivered genuine satisfaction. For seniors living alone, bouillon represented the simplest possible hot lunch, requiring only a kettle and a mug. The broth's salty warmth felt nourishing, even when solid food held no appeal, making it particularly valuable during illness or on days when energy for cooking didn't exist. Crackers floating in the broth or eaten alongside provided substance, turning liquid into something approaching a meal. Beef and chicken varieties offered options, though many seniors kept both in their pantries. The cubes stored indefinitely and took up almost no space, making them essential emergency provisions. This wasn't lunch that anyone bragged about, but it served its purpose admirably. On cold afternoons, a cup of bouillon brought comfort that belied its simplicity. Salmon salad sandwiches turned affordable canned fish into creamy, protein-rich meals that families relied on when fresh meat was scarce or expensive. Canned salmon was drained, bones removed or mashed in, then mixed with mayonnaise, celery, onion, and seasonings, much like tuna salad. The flavor was richer and more distinctive than tuna, with a slightly fishy taste that announced itself boldly. Spread on bread with lettuce or eaten plain, salmon salad provided complete protein and essential omega fatty acids that growing bodies needed. The cans stored indefinitely in pantries, ready whenever unexpected hunger called or paychecks ran short. Families bought canned salmon by the case when prices dropped, stockpiling affordable protein for uncertain times. The soft bones, when mashed into the salad, provided calcium that children especially needed. Seniors remember salmon salad as church potluck standard and weeknight supper staple. The sandwich represented reliable nutrition that required no refrigeration until the can was opened. Deviled eggs sat on special plates with oval indentations, their swirled yolk filling piped into perfect rosettes that grandmothers could prepare in the quiet moments before guests arrived. Hard-boiled eggs were halved, their yolks scooped out and mashed with mayonnaise, mustard, a splash of vinegar, and seasonings until smooth and creamy. The mixture was spooned or piped back into the whites, then finished with a sprinkle of paprika that added color and subtle smokiness to each bite. Some grandmothers added pickle relish for tang. Others incorporated a dash of hot sauce for warmth, but all understood that the filling needed to be seasoned assertively to compensate for the bland whites. Deviled eggs disappeared faster than almost any other appetizer on holiday tables, their rich creaminess and portable size making them impossible to resist. The eggs could be prepared hours ahead and refrigerated, though the paprika dusting was always added just before serving. Homemade breakfast cereals nourished families for generations before Kellogg's and General Mills convinced Americans that only factory-processed grains were safe. Mothers toasted oats with honey and nuts, creating granola with crunch and depth that boxed cereals couldn't match. Families soaked grains overnight in buttermilk, making porridges more nutritious than instant versions. Muesli combined raw oats with dried fruits and seeds, requiring nothing more than a bowl and milk. These breakfasts cost pennies and provided sustained energy without sugar crashes. The cereal companies spent millions on cartoon mascots and toy prizes, targeting children who demanded colorful boxes. They marketed speed and convenience while hiding ingredient lists filled with sugar and artificial flavors. Within decades, homemade cereals became associated with health food extremism rather than common sense. The simple knowledge of toasting grains or soaking oats overnight disappeared from most kitchens entirely. Rice porridge with butter transformed leftover rice into creamy morning comfort for seniors stretching every grain. Cold rice was simmered with milk and salt until grains broke down and the mixture turned thick and smooth. A generous pat of butter was stirred in, melting into golden ribbons throughout the pale porridge. Some added sugar, while others preferred simple buttery richness. This breakfast cost almost nothing since it used rice that might otherwise be discarded. The soft texture required no chewing, ideal for elderly folks with dental problems. Rice porridge could be prepared in minutes on the smallest burner, perfect for seniors with limited mobility. The warmth spread through the body, providing comfort on cold mornings. In Asian and European immigrant communities, rice porridge carried cultural memories connecting elderly cooks to distant homelands. This breakfast has largely disappeared as instant oatmeal took over, but those who remember it recall how butter transformed plain rice into something satisfying. Welsh rarebit was once the sophisticated cousin of plain cheese toast, transforming simple ingredients into something that felt almost elegant for lunch alone. The dish began with a thick sauce made from sharp cheddar melted slowly with butter, a splash of beer or milk, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce. This golden, bubbling mixture was poured over toasted bread and placed under the broiler until the edges turned brown and crispy. For seniors living alone in the 1950s and 1960s, Welsh rarebit represented an affordable indulgence requiring only pantry staples. The cheese provided protein and calcium, while the toast offered filling carbohydrates that satisfied without waste. One slice was often enough for lunch, making it economical for single-serving preparation. The dish carried memories of lunch counters where it appeared on menus as something special. Though rarely made today, Welsh rarebit proved that cheese on toast could become a meal worthy of sitting down to enjoy. Mustard sandwiches represented rock-bottom survival food during the hardest years of American poverty, yet they carried surprising dignity in their simplicity. 2 slices of bread spread generously with bright yellow mustard created a meal costing virtually nothing but still feeling intentional. The tangy, vinegary bite provided flavor intensity that plain bread could never deliver alone. Children walked to school with these in their lunch pails during the Depression, eating them without shame because everyone understood hard times. The mustard's sharpness fooled the brain into thinking something more substantial had been consumed. Families kept large jars of cheap yellow mustard in pantries, knowing it could stretch meals when nothing remained. The sandwich required no refrigeration and could be made by the youngest child. Seniors who survived those lean years remember mustard sandwiches with quiet pride, knowing they represented resilience and determination to eat something rather than nothing. Cranberry orange relish was the bright, fresh condiment that grandmothers whipped up in their new food processors or old-fashioned meat grinders, while other dishes simmered on the stove. Unlike the jellied cranberry sauce that slid from cans, this relish sparkled with texture and tartness that cut through rich holiday foods like nothing else could. The recipe required just 3 ingredients: fresh cranberries, a whole orange cut into chunks including the peel, and sugar to taste. Everything went through the grinder or processor until coarsely chopped, the orange oils releasing their perfume as they mixed with the berries. The relish needed time for flavors to meld, but the actual preparation took under 5 minutes of active work. Grandmothers made it the night before or early Christmas morning, letting it chill while they focused on the main meal. The vibrant ruby color looked stunning in cut glass dishes that came out only for holidays, proving that the simplest preparations often made the most beautiful presentations. Cultured butter was the only butter Americans knew before sweet cream butter became the industrialized standard that erased centuries of dairy tradition. Farm wives collected cream over several days, allowing natural bacteria to develop tangy complexity before churning. This fermentation created butter with depth, nuttiness, and slight sourness that enhanced everything, from morning toast to holiday cookies to pan sauces gleaming with golden richness. The buttermilk left behind was equally prized, thick and tangy rather than the thin liquid sold today. Land O'Lakes pushed sweet cream butter because unfermented cream was easier to ship without flavor variation. They marketed freshness while actually removing beneficial cultures that made traditional butter flavorful. Home butter making became associated with poverty rather than quality. The knowledge of culturing cream and churning proper butter faded so completely that European cultured butters now command premium prices. What grandmothers made weekly became imported luxury. Cornmeal porridge delivered Southern comfort to seniors who grew up with corn as the staff of life. Coarse cornmeal was stirred slowly into boiling salted water and cooked until thick, requiring attention to prevent lumps. The finished porridge was pale yellow and slightly gritty, served hot with butter, milk, or syrup. Unlike smooth cream of wheat, cornmeal porridge had texture reminding eaters they consumed real food. The dish cost mere pennies since cornmeal was among the cheapest grains. Seniors could prepare it on the smallest burner using one pot, making cleanup easy. The porridge stuck to ribs, providing sustained energy through morning activities. In Southern communities, cornmeal porridge carried generations of history, connecting elderly cooks to ancestors who survived on corn when nothing else was available. The slight grittiness was considered virtue, proof of stone-ground authenticity. This breakfast has been replaced by instant varieties, but those who remember recall satisfaction of properly cooked cornmeal. Potted meat and crackers provided quick, shelf-stable lunch protein for seniors who needed no-fuss meals ready in moments. Those small cans of spreadable meat paste, often pork or chicken-based, cost mere pennies and required no refrigeration until opened. The meat spread easily on saltines, rye crisps, or Melba toast, creating bite-sized portions that could be eaten while reading or listening to the radio. For seniors living alone, this lunch represented pure convenience since crackers stayed fresh in sleeves and meat cans stacked neatly in pantries. The flavor was salty and intensely meaty, a little going far when spread thinly across crackers. Some added pickle slices or mustard to brighten the richness, though many ate the combination plain. The protein helped maintain energy through afternoon hours when larger meals felt burdensome. This wasn't glamorous eating, but it was practical sustenance acknowledging the reality of cooking for one. Though still sold in stores, potted meat has disappeared from respectable lunch fare. Bacon dripping sandwiches turned saved cooking fat into meals delivering rich, smoky satisfaction without wasting precious bacon. Families saved bacon grease in jars beside the stove, the accumulated fat representing flavor wealth too valuable to discard. The drippings were spread onto bread while still warm, absorbing into the soft surface and creating butter-like richness. Salt was usually unnecessary since the bacon fat carried plenty, though some added pepper for warmth. The flavor was unmistakably bacon without requiring actual bacon, stretching the essence of expensive cured pork across many meals. During the Depression and wartime rationing, this sandwich appeared in households where meat was rationed or unaffordable. Children ate these without complaint because the smoky richness satisfied cravings that plain bread never could. The fat provided calories desperately needed by growing bodies and working adults. Seniors remember their mothers guarding the bacon grease jar, knowing those drippings transformed ordinary bread. Harvard beets transformed the humble root vegetable into a glistening ruby red side dish that added color and sophistication to holiday spreads in mere minutes. Grandmothers kept canned beets in their pantries year-round, but brought them out especially at Christmas when their deep crimson color complemented the seasonal table. The sauce came together quickly, sugar, cornstarch, and vinegar whisked in a saucepan until thickened. Then the drained beets were stirred in to coat. The balance of sweet and tangy created a flavor that even beet skeptics could appreciate, the vinegar cutting through richness while sugar smoothed any earthy edges. A pat of butter stirred in at the end added gloss and richness that made the dish look like it required far more effort than it actually did. Harvard beets held well in warming dishes, making them ideal for buffet-style holiday meals where timing was unpredictable. The recipe appeared in community cookbooks across America, each version slightly different but all achievable in under 10 minutes. Homemade condensed milk was a pantry staple families prepared before Borden and Carnation monopolized the market with canned versions. The process required nothing more than fresh milk, sugar, and patience, simmering whole milk until it reduced by half while stirring constantly. The result was thick, sweet, and intensely creamy with caramelized depth commercial products couldn't match. Farm families made it during summer when cows produced abundantly, storing it in cool cellars where it kept for weeks. It became the base for fudge, caramel sauce, and sweetened coffee during hard times. Canned milk companies marketed convenience, implying homemade versions were unreliable and potentially dangerous without factory sterilization. Their advertising suggested only the uneducated still bothered with old-fashioned methods. Within decades, the simple skill of reducing milk disappeared from common knowledge, replaced entirely by pull-tab cans. Those who taste the homemade version discover a richness that makes commercial products seem flat. Coffee soup sounds peculiar, but sustained countless seniors when food was scarce and creativity essential. Day-old bread was torn into chunks, placed in a bowl, then covered with hot coffee sweetened with sugar and lightened with milk. The bread absorbed warm liquid, softening into something between beverage and meal. Seniors spooned it like porridge, coffee mingling with soft bread, providing caffeine, carbohydrates, and warmth simultaneously. During the Depression, coffee soup cost almost nothing since bread scraps and leftover coffee were already present in kitchens. Seniors could make it in minutes without dirtying extra dishes. In Scandinavian and German immigrant communities, coffee soup carried cultural memories of the old country. The caffeine provided morning lift, while bread gave substance. This breakfast disappeared as prosperity returned, but those who remember recall the strange comfort of warm, coffee-soaked bread on desperate mornings. The thing about beans is that it's not like they can't be good. They just don't have main course potential. That's why we're taking a look at this vintage recipe known as butter beans. This is another thing that would be served a lot in the South, mostly as a side at family gatherings, and I know that doesn't exactly go with what I said, but that was for when they needed to cook large batches, you know? Even if a bean dish is good for just 2 or 3 people, it is still a bean dish, and those are always easy to make in bulk. Butter beans really did work for just casual comfort food too, though. It's because of the onions and smoked meat going perfectly with the butter and beans. All the flavors here just complemented each other, and it's been a dish that families keep in their cookbooks for many generations now. Creamed corn on toast transformed a humble canned vegetable into a warm, comforting lunch that could be ready in minutes. Seniors living alone during the 1950s and 1960s often kept cans of creamed corn stacked in pantries, knowing they could heat one on the stovetop and pour it directly over buttered toast for a filling midday meal. The cream-style corn needed no additional preparation, its thick texture clinging to the bread while the natural sweetness balanced the butter's richness. Some cooks added a dash of black pepper, but the dish required no elaborate seasoning to satisfy. For those on fixed incomes, creamed corn represented remarkable value at roughly 15 cents per can, enough to top 2 or 3 slices of toast. The combination provided both carbohydrates and vegetables, offering balanced nutrition without complicated cooking. This was practical food for practical people, requiring only a saucepan and 5 minutes of attention. Though largely forgotten today, creamed corn on toast once filled stomachs across America. Pimiento cheese sandwiches spread Southern tradition between slices of soft white bread, creating comfort food that graced both humble tables and elegant gatherings. Sharp cheddar cheese was shredded fine and mixed with chopped pimiento peppers, mayonnaise, and sometimes cayenne or Worcestershire sauce. The result was a creamy, slightly tangy spread with gentle sweetness from the roasted peppers. Every Southern household had its own recipe, guarded and passed down through generations of women who adjusted proportions to family taste. The spread was economical because a little cheese went far when mixed with mayo and peppers. Ladies served pimiento cheese sandwiches at bridge clubs, church functions, and afternoon teas, proving budget-conscious cooking could still impress. Children ate them without crusts as after-school snacks. Factory workers packed them knowing they'd stay fresh through long shifts. Seniors remember pimiento cheese as the taste of home, a flavor so distinctly Southern it carried regional identity in every bite. Ambrosia salad appeared at Christmas gatherings in cut glass bowls, its layers of fruit and coconut glistening with sweetness that children considered dessert masquerading as a side dish. Grandmothers assembled it from canned mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, maraschino cherries, miniature marshmallows, and shredded coconut, all folded together with sour cream or whipped topping. The preparation required nothing more than opening cans, draining fruit, and stirring everything together in a large bowl before chilling. Some versions included sliced bananas added just before serving to prevent browning, while others incorporated chopped pecans for crunch. The name ambrosia referenced the food of the gods, and to children of the era, it truly seemed divine, sweet, creamy, and studded with colorful fruit and puffy marshmallows. Grandmothers knew the salad improved after chilling for an hour, allowing the marshmallows to soften slightly and the flavors to meld into creamy harmony. Tallow-fried foods represented the pinnacle of crispy cooking before McDonald's famously switched to vegetable oil, and the rest of the industry followed. Beef tallow rendered from sweat created French fries with shatteringly crisp exteriors, donuts with delicate crusts, and fried chicken that stayed crispy long after cooling. The fat was stable at high temperatures, didn't break down into harmful compounds, and added subtle beefy richness that enhanced everything it touched. Butchers sold sweet cheaply, making tallow economical for households that rendered their own. The vegetable oil industry waged decades of war against animal fats, funding research that blamed saturated fats for heart disease while ignoring dangers of their own products. Fast food chains eliminated tallow in response to activist pressure, and home cooks followed. The fries that made McDonald's famous became pale imitations once vegetable oil replaced tallow. An entire generation has never tasted properly tallow-fried food or known such crispy perfection. Creamed eggs on toast elevated humble eggs into something almost luxurious for seniors eating alone. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped, then folded into white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk seasoned with salt and pepper. This creamy mixture was spooned over toast, sauce soaking in while egg pieces provided substance. The dish offered complete protein along with calcium and carbohydrates. During rationing years, creamed eggs stretched few eggs into full meals without expensive meat. Seniors appreciated that hard-boiled eggs could be prepared ahead and stored for quick morning meals. The sauce could be seasoned with paprika or chives for variety. Making it required basic cooking skills, giving seniors accomplishment and independence. The combination of crispy toast softened by cream sauce created textural interest. Creamed eggs was considered proper breakfast food, appropriate for company. This dish has nearly vanished, replaced by faster options lacking warm cream sauce comfort. Canned chicken noodle soup served as the universal comfort lunch for seniors living alone, requiring nothing more than a can opener and a few minutes on the stovetop. Campbell's and other brands cost roughly 15 cents per can and stretched with water to fill a generous bowl. The soup heated quickly, filling kitchens with aromas that signaled care and nourishment even when no one else was present. The noodles provided substance, the broth delivered warmth, and the small pieces of chicken added protein that justified calling it a complete lunch. For those with diminished appetites or difficulty chewing, the soft textures went down easily. Crackers crumbled into the bowl, extended the meal, and added satisfying crunch. Many seniors kept cases of chicken noodle soup stacked in pantries, viewing them as essential provisions against hunger and loneliness alike. The soup worked equally well for lunch or light supper, providing flexibility that busier meals couldn't offer. This humble can has sustained generations through quiet lunchtimes. Butter and honey sandwiches combined two ancient foods into simple perfection that satisfied both hunger and the human craving for sweetness. Soft bread was spread generously with butter, then drizzled with golden honey that pooled in the butter's soft surface. The combination created something greater than either ingredient alone, the butter's richness mellowing the honey's intensity, while the honey's sweetness enhanced the butter's subtle flavor. Children loved these as treats that felt special despite requiring only pantry staples. The sandwich provided quick energy from the honey's natural sugars and sustained calories from the butter's fat. Families kept honey in cupboards throughout rural America, often from local beekeepers or their own backyard hives. The cost was minimal when both ingredients came from the land rather than the store. Seniors remember butter and honey sandwiches as breakfast, as snacks, as comfort during difficult days. The combination tasted like childhood itself, simple and sweet and completely satisfying. Bread and butter pickles from grandmother's pantry appeared in small dishes alongside the main meal, their sweet tangy crunch providing contrast to rich holiday foods. Those who hadn't put up pickles themselves could doctor store-bought versions with extra sugar, vinegar, and spices simmered briefly, then cooled over the pickle slices. The thin cucumber rounds with their ruffled edges looked charming, arranged in overlapping rows on pickle dishes that came out only for special occasions. Their sweetness came from sugar balanced with the sharpness of vinegar, while turmeric gave them their characteristic golden hue and celery seed added aromatic depth. Children often discovered they loved pickles through these sweeter versions that lacked the aggressive sourness of dill varieties. Bread and butter pickles represented the farm wife's art of preservation, though by mid-century, many grandmothers relied on commercial versions enhanced with personal touches. Lacto-fermented vegetables preserved harvests for millennia before commercial canning made traditional fermentation seem unnecessary. Families packed cucumbers, cabbage, and other vegetables into crocks with salt and water, allowing beneficial bacteria to transform them over weeks. The results were tangy, crunchy, and alive with probiotics that supported digestive health. Sauerkraut, pickles, and kimchi kept through winter without refrigeration, providing vitamins when fresh produce was unavailable. Vinegar-based pickling replaced lacto-fermentation because it was faster and more predictable. Commercial pickle manufacturers used pasteurization that killed beneficial bacteria, creating products that were sour but nutritionally dead. The knowledge of maintaining fermentation crocks, of testing brine strength, of knowing when vegetables were properly preserved, all faded within 2 generations. Today, fermented vegetables command premium prices at health food stores for what every grandmother produced in her cellar. Sardines on crackers delivered complete protein and nutrition for seniors who valued convenience and economy. A tin of sardines was opened and small fish arranged on saltine crackers, sometimes with lemon or hot sauce. The combination was salty, briny, and intensely flavored in ways making each bite satisfying. This breakfast required no cooking, no heat, and no cleanup beyond a tin and plate. Sardines cost little and lasted years in the pantry, reliable protein when fresh food was unavailable. The calcium in sardine bones and healthy fats made this breakfast nutritionally dense despite simplicity. Seniors living alone appreciated that breakfast could be ready in seconds, perfect for mornings when energy was low. The crackers provided carbohydrates and crunch balancing the soft, oily fish. In fishing communities and immigrant households, sardines carried no stigma, just practical protein. This breakfast has nearly vanished as modern tastes moved toward blander flavors, yet it once sustained countless seniors. Vienna sausages and crackers served as the self-contained lunch that required no cooking, no refrigeration, and no cleanup beyond disposing of the can. Those small, soft sausages packed in briny liquid provided ready-to-eat protein that seniors living alone could access whenever hunger struck. A can cost roughly 15 cents and contained enough sausages to pair with crackers for a complete, if modest, midday meal. The sausages had a mild flavor and tender texture that some found comforting while others tolerated as practical sustenance. Eaten straight from the can with crackers, this lunch could be assembled in under 10 minutes without dirtying pots or pans. For elderly folks on fixed incomes, Vienna sausages represented protein that lasted indefinitely and required nothing beyond opening the can. Some included mustard for dipping, but many ate them plain. The lunch carried associations with simple times when elaborate preparation seemed unnecessary. Vienna sausages have largely disappeared from consideration as proper lunch fare. Cheese Dream sandwiches were the elegant cousin of simple grilled cheese, topped with bacon or tomato, and broiled until bubbly and golden. Open-faced and sophisticated, they appeared in women's magazines during the 1940s and 1950s as budget-friendly luncheon fare. A slice of bread was topped with cheese, sometimes with bacon strips underneath, then placed under the broiler until the cheese melted and developed brown spots. The result was more refined than standard grilled cheese, feeling almost like restaurant food despite humble ingredients. Housewives served these at bridge clubs and ladies' luncheons, proving that economy didn't mean sacrificing presentation. Children considered them special treats, fascinated by the bubbling cheese under the broiler's heat. The open-faced design meant one slice of bread instead of two, stretching resources further. Seniors remember Cheese Dreams as the fancy version of everyday sandwiches, proof that creativity could elevate simple ingredients into something extraordinary. Pickled watermelon rind appeared in cut glass dishes at Southern Christmas tables, a sweet tart condiment that grandmothers put up in summer, but could also make quickly from store-bought jars enhanced with extra spices. Those who bought prepared rinds would simmer them briefly with additional cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, and a splash of vinegar to make them taste homemade. The translucent pale green pieces glistened like jewels, their texture crisp tender, and their flavor an unexpected combination of sweetness and pickle tang. Grandmothers served them alongside ham and turkey as a palate cleanser, their brightness cutting through rich meats and heavy gravies. The rinds connected Christmas tables to summer gardens and the waste-nothing philosophy that defined earlier generations. Even families who hadn't grown their own watermelons appreciated this old-fashioned condiment that seemed fancy but cost very little. Pickled watermelon rind proved that resourcefulness and flavor could coexist beautifully on holiday tables. Homemade mayonnaise was the only mayonnaise anyone knew before Hellmann's and Kraft convinced Americans that emulsification was too difficult for home cooks. The process took minutes, whisking egg yolks with oil until they transformed into thick, glossy sauce flavored with lemon juice and a touch of mustard. Fresh mayonnaise had brightness and richness that jarred versions couldn't approach, with clean flavor that enhanced rather than masked foods. Every cook knew how to make it, adjusting consistency to personal preference. Commercial brands marketed convenience and shelf stability, implying homemade versions were risky from raw eggs. Their products contained stabilizers, preservatives, and sugar that extended shelf life to months. Within a generation, the simple skill of emulsifying eggs and oil became intimidating rather than routine. Children grew up believing mayonnaise came only from jars and that making it required special equipment. The fresh, bright flavor of real mayonnaise became a restaurant luxury. Cream of wheat with brown sugar delivered smooth comfort to seniors needing easy nourishment on cold mornings. Fine wheat cereal cooked quickly in water or milk, stirring constantly to prevent lumps until reaching creamy thickness. Brown sugar was stirred in while hot, melting into sweet ribbons throughout the pale porridge, and butter created golden pools on the surface. The cereal was fortified with iron and vitamins, nutritionally valuable for elderly folks struggling to eat large meals. A single box provided weeks of breakfasts for under 50 cents during the 1940s. Seniors appreciated that it cooked in 5 minutes and required only one pot to clean. The smooth texture was gentle on sensitive gums, accessible even when health was failing. This breakfast represented industrialized comfort food, bringing factory convenience to tables where complicated cooking was no longer possible. Cream of wheat still exists, but few prepare it with the patience that once made it special, taking time to stir properly and sweeten thoughtfully. Cottage cheese and canned peaches became a lunchtime staple for seniors seeking something cool, refreshing, and requiring absolutely no cooking. This combination appeared on countless plates during the 1950s and 1960s when cottage cheese was promoted for its protein content and digestibility. A scoop of creamy cottage cheese surrounded by golden peach halves created a meal that felt lighter than sandwiches but remained filling enough to sustain energy through the afternoon. The sweetness of the syrup-packed peaches balanced the mild tang of the cheese, creating flavors that complemented rather than competed. For seniors living alone, this lunch offered particular advantages, since both components kept well in the refrigerator and required no preparation beyond spooning onto a plate. A small container of cottage cheese and a single can of peaches could provide lunches for several days, stretching grocery budgets admirably. Though rarely seen on modern plates, this pairing once represented sensible, economical eating for one. Onion sandwiches carried a sharp, pungent honesty that defined working-class meals when meat was scarce and gardens provided what little families had. A thick slice of raw white onion was placed between bread spread with butter or lard, seasoned only with salt. The flavor was bold, almost aggressive, clearing sinuses and filling bellies with something substantial enough to call dinner. During the Depression, raw onions cost pennies and lasted weeks in cool cellars, making them reliable sustenance when nothing else was available. The sandwich required no cooking and could be assembled in seconds by tired workers returning home. Children learned to eat them without complaint because complaining meant going hungry. The sharpness seemed to wake up taste buds dulled by bland, poverty-era meals. Seniors today remember the sandwich with mixed emotions, recalling both the hardship it represented and the strange satisfaction it provided. What seemed like desperation food actually delivered vitamins and fullness when families had almost nothing. Creamed spinach transformed frozen or canned spinach into a velvety side dish through nothing more than butter, cream, and a few minutes of stovetop attention. Grandmothers squeezed excess moisture from thawed frozen spinach or drained canned spinach thoroughly before adding it to a pan with melted butter and a splash of heavy cream. The mixture simmered briefly while the cream reduced and clung to the dark green leaves, creating richness that made even spinach skeptics reconsider. A pinch of nutmeg, always nutmeg with spinach, grandmothers insisted, added warmth that complemented the vegetable's earthy flavor without overwhelming it. Some versions included a spoonful of sour cream stirred in at the end for extra tang, while others finished with a squeeze of lemon juice for brightness. Creamed spinach could hold in a warm oven or be reheated gently without losing its appeal, making it practical for holiday timing. The dish proved that frozen vegetables could become elegant with proper technique. Raw milk cheeses were standard before pasteurization laws, and dairy lobbying convinced Americans that unpasteurized dairy was dangerous. Farm families made fresh cheese from morning milk, creating curds with complex flavors reflecting their cows' diets and local terroir. These cheeses developed character as they aged, sharp, nutty, or tangy, depending on milk and technique. The process was simple enough that children learned it young, turning surplus milk into protein that's stored through winter. Large dairy processors pushed pasteurization not primarily for safety, but because standardized milk was easier to process at industrial scale. Raw milk cheese became illegal to sell fresh, killing the farm-gate cheese trade that sustained rural economies. The beneficial bacteria that gave traditional cheese its complexity were destroyed along with potential pathogens. Today, raw milk cheese requires 60-day aging and sells at premium prices, making what farm wives made weekly into artisanal luxury. Milk toast was the gentle morning companion that sustained countless seniors through quiet mornings alone. Day-old bread was toasted golden, placed in a shallow bowl, then covered with warm milk seasoned with a pinch of salt and a pat of butter. The bread softened slowly as it absorbed the liquid, creating something between solid food and soup that went down easy for those with sensitive stomachs. During the Depression and into the 1950s, milk toast cost less than 5 cents and provided calcium and comfort in a single bowl. Doctors recommended it for the elderly because warm milk aided digestion while bread provided substance. Seniors could prepare it in minutes using ingredients always on hand. The dish required no special equipment, just patience and understanding that simple foods brought peace. Milk toast disappeared as faster breakfasts took over, but those who remember it recall the comfort of warm milk soaking into bread on cold mornings. Canned spaghetti on toast turned a children's food into a surprisingly satisfying senior lunch that could be ready in under 5 minutes. The canned spaghetti, whether Franco-American or store brand, heated quickly and poured directly over buttered toast created a meal that felt more substantial than its humble origins suggested. For seniors living alone, one can provide it enough for a generous serving, sometimes with leftovers for the next day. The sweet tomato sauce soaked into the toast while the soft noodles provided easy-to-chew texture. The combination delivered carbohydrates, some protein, and the psychological comfort of something warm and filling. At roughly 20 cents per can, this lunch stretched budgets admirably. The toast added crunch and helped extend the canned spaghetti, making the meal feel complete rather than skimpy. Many seniors who'd fed this to children discovered it worked equally well for solo lunches when cooking seemed burdensome. Canned spaghetti on toast has faded from respectable lunch options. Liverwurst sandwiches delivered iron-rich nutrition in a spreadable form that European immigrants introduced to American working-class tables. The soft, pinkish-gray meat spread easily onto bread, its flavor deeply savory with unmistakable liver notes that people either loved or couldn't tolerate. Topped with mustard, sliced onion, or pickles, liverwurst provided complete protein at prices far below fresh meat. German and Eastern European families brought liverwurst traditions to America, where it became a deli staple and lunchbox regular. The spread kept well under refrigeration, and a little went far, making it economical for large families. Children grew up eating liverwurst without realizing they were consuming organ meat, finding the mild flavor approachable. Factory workers carried these sandwiches knowing they'd provide sustained energy through long shifts. Seniors remember liverwurst as everyday food, nothing fancy but reliably filling. The sandwich proved that immigrant food traditions enriched American tables. Hot spiced fruit compote was the warm side dish that grandmothers assembled from canned fruits transformed by butter, brown sugar, and Christmas spices into something that tasted homemade and special. Canned peach halves, pear halves, pineapple rings, and maraschino cherries were drained and arranged in baking dishes, then dotted with butter and sprinkled with brown sugar, cinnamon, and a pinch of nutmeg. 10 minutes under the broiler or in a hot oven caramelize the sugar into a glossy glaze while warming the fruits through. The compote was served hot alongside ham or turkey, its sweetness complementing savory meats while its warmth contrasted with cold salads and relishes. Grandmothers who wanted extra richness added a splash of rum or brandy before baking, the alcohol burning off while leaving behind its warm flavor. Hot spiced fruit compote proved that canned goods, when treated with creativity and care, could become memorable holiday dishes. Bone broth tonics were the cornerstone of home remedies before bouillon cubes convinced Americans that real broth was too much trouble. Families kept stock pots simmering on wood stoves for days, extracting collagen and minerals from beef knuckles and chicken carcasses that butchers gave away for pennies. The broth turned wobbly when chilled, a sign of nutritional richness, and was used for soups, gravies, and healing drinks for the sick. Mothers served warm cups to children with colds, knowing it soothed throats better than any pharmacy product. Campbell's and Knorr marketed convenience, suggesting busy modern women shouldn't waste time on primitive cooking methods. Their products contained salt and artificial flavors, but almost none of the nutrients that made real broth valuable. The knowledge of proper stock making nearly vanished within 2 generations, replaced by foil-wrapped cubes dissolving into yellow water. Today, bone broth sells as a wellness trend at premium prices for what grandmothers once made from scraps. Johnny Cakes brought colonial simplicity to seniors who valued tradition and economy equally. These flat cornmeal cakes were made from stone-ground cornmeal, salt, and boiling water mixed into thick batter. Spoonfuls dropped onto a hot greased griddle and cooked until golden on both sides, creating cakes crispy at edges and tender in the center. Topped with butter and syrup, Johnny Cakes provided sustenance for pennies. The recipe required no eggs or milk, making it accessible when pantries were bare. Seniors could prepare them on a single burner without waste. Cornmeal provided fiber and energy while cooking fat added calories. In New England and the South, Johnny Cakes carried centuries of history, connecting elderly cooks to ancestors who prepared the same cakes. The texture was heartier than wheat pancakes, more substantial and filling. Johnny Cakes represented American ingenuity, making something satisfying from humble grain. Few seniors today know the pleasure of hot Johnny cakes on cold mornings. Crackers with cheese spread provided instant gratification for seniors who needed lunch without any preparation whatsoever. Those jars of processed cheese spread, often Cheez Whiz or store brands, required no slicing, no refrigeration until opened, and spread easily even on delicate crackers. The flavor was salty, vaguely cheesy, and intensely satisfying to those who grew up when such convenience products represented modern marvels. For seniors living alone, the combination offered protein and carbohydrates in forms that could be consumed standing at the counter or sitting in a favorite chair. A jar of cheese spread cost roughly 30 cents and lasted through numerous lunches. The crackers maintained freshness in their sleeves, ready whenever hunger called. This wasn't gourmet eating, but it was practical sustenance acknowledging the reality of solo dining. Many seniors kept cheese spread as pantry staples alongside peanut butter. The combination delivered quick satisfaction without dirtying pots or pans. Chopped ham sandwiches turned affordable canned meat into lunchbox staples that fed working families across mid-century America. The ham came pre-ground in cans or was chopped fine from deli ends and mixed with mayonnaise, mustard, pickle relish, and sometimes hard-boiled egg. The resulting spread was smooth enough for easy spreading but chunky enough to feel substantial. The flavor was salty and smoky with tangy notes from the relish cutting through the richness. Mothers made batches on Sunday nights, filling containers that would provide quick sandwich material throughout the busy week. The spread cost far less than sliced deli ham while providing similar protein. Children found the texture more appealing than mysterious lunch meats with visible fat. Factory workers and office clerks carried these sandwiches, knowing they'd deliver reliable fuel through long afternoons. Seniors remember chopped ham as everyday food, the kind of practical cooking that kept families fed without fuss. Pickled beets added jewel-toned color to relish trays through a preparation as simple as opening jars and arranging slices on small serving dishes. Grandmothers who wanted to elevate store-bought pickled beets would warm them briefly with extra vinegar, sugar, and whole spices like cloves or allspice berries for deeper flavor. The deep magenta slices glistened with their sweet tart brine, providing striking color contrast against pale celery and green pickles on the relish tray. Some families preferred the beets sliced thin, others quartered, and still others chose tiny whole baby beets that looked elegant arranged in concentric circles. Pickled beets could stain everything they touched, so grandmothers always served them in their own small dish with a dedicated serving spoon. Their earthy sweetness paired particularly well with rich meats, cutting through fat and providing palate refreshment between bites of heavy holiday fare. Fresh ground peanut butter was what families spread on bread before Skippy and Jif convinced America that hydrogenated, sugar-laden paste was superior. General stores had grinders where customers watched roasted peanuts transform into butter before their eyes. Nothing added but perhaps a pinch of salt. The texture was rough, the oil separated and required stirring, and the flavor was intensely nutty with none of the cloying sweetness of commercial brands. Children grew up knowing what peanuts actually tasted like. Big brands changed everything by adding hydrogenated oils to prevent separation and sugar to appeal to developing palates. Their smooth product was marketed as modern, while the grinding machines disappeared from stores. Generations grew up believing peanut butter should taste like candy, and that oil separation indicated spoilage. The simple pleasure of real peanut butter, earthy, rich, and honest, became foreign to Americans raised on processed spreads engineered for shelf stability rather than flavor. Soft-boiled eggs with toast soldiers turned simple ingredients into something ceremonial for seniors eating alone. The egg was lowered into simmering water and cooked 3 to 4 minutes until the white set, but the yolk remained liquid gold. Placed in an egg cup, the top was cracked off, revealing glowing orange center. Buttered toast strips called soldiers were dipped into the runny yolk, each piece emerging coated in rich warmth. The ritual of dipping gave structure to mornings that might otherwise feel empty. Eggs cost cents apiece and provided complete protein-sustaining energy all day. The toast used bread that might otherwise go stale, stretching resources further. Seniors valued this breakfast because it felt civilized despite poverty-level cost. Egg cups became treasured possessions, often inherited from parents. This breakfast required attention and timing, giving seniors something to focus on when days stretched long ahead. The warm yolk-coating cool toast created contrasts that made eating pleasurable. Open-faced cheese dreams turned simple ingredients into something that felt special enough to serve on real plates with proper attention. The preparation began with buttered bread topped with sliced cheese, then placed under the broiler until the cheese bubbled and turned golden brown at the edges. This wasn't merely cheese toast, but a composed dish that seniors living alone could make feel like an event worth sitting down to enjoy. The broiling transformed ordinary American or cheddar into something almost sophisticated, with crispy edges and molten centers that satisfied deeply. Some cooks added tomato slices beneath the cheese, variations that stretched a simple concept into infinite possibilities. For those cooking alone, cheese dreams offered portion control, since each slice of bread represented a deliberate serving. The ingredients cost mere pennies and required no special shopping, making this lunch accessible any day. Though the name has faded from vocabulary, broiled cheese on toast remains comfort food at its purest. Banana and mayonnaise sandwiches sound strange to modern ears, but were beloved comfort food throughout the South during the mid-20th century. The combination emerged when bananas became affordable, and Southern cooks discovered that mayonnaise's creamy richness paired surprisingly well with the fruit's sweetness. Ripe bananas were sliced onto soft white bread slathered with mayo, sometimes with a sprinkle of salt. The texture was creamy and soft, almost like eating banana pudding in sandwich form. Children loved these because they tasted like a treat despite costing almost nothing. The sandwich provided quick energy from natural sugars, while the mayo added satisfying richness. Families packed them for school lunches, knowing they stayed fresh longer than many alternatives. Duke's mayonnaise was the preferred brand in Southern households. Today, this sandwich divides people into believers and skeptics, but seniors who grew up eating them remember the simple pleasure of something special from humble ingredients. Waldorf salad brought crisp apples, crunchy celery, and toasted walnuts together in a creamy dressing that grandmothers could assemble while the turkey rested. Created at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel in the 1890s, this salad became a Christmas staple because it required no cooking and used ingredients that kept well through winter months. Grandmothers diced crisp red apples, sliced tender celery stalks, and roughly chopped walnuts before folding everything into mayonnaise, lightened with a splash of lemon juice. The lemon served double duty, brightening the dressing while preventing the apples from browning. Some families added raisins or grapes for extra sweetness, while others preferred the original simplicity of just 3 main ingredients. The salad could be made hours ahead and refrigerated, though grandmothers knew it tasted best when assembled just before serving, so the apples stayed crisp. Waldorf salad proved that elegance didn't require complexity, just quality ingredients combined with care. Fresh ground peanut butter was what families spread on bread before Skippy and Jif convinced America that hydrogenated, sugar-laden paste was superior. General stores had grinders where customers watched roasted peanuts transform into butter before their eyes. Nothing added but perhaps a pinch of salt. The texture was rough, the oil separated and required stirring, and the flavor was intensely nutty with none of the cloying sweetness of commercial brands. Children grew up knowing what peanuts actually tasted like. Big brands changed everything by adding hydrogenated oils to prevent separation and sugar to appeal to developing palates. Their smooth product was marketed as modern, while the grinding machines disappeared from stores. Generations grew up believing peanut butter should taste like candy, and that oil separation indicated spoilage. The simple pleasure of real peanut butter, earthy, rich, and honest, became foreign to Americans raised on processed spreads engineered for shelf stability rather than flavor. Grits with butter represented the essential Southern breakfast sustaining seniors through decades of quiet mornings. Stone-ground corn grits were simmered slowly in salted water, stirring until reaching creamy thickness coating a spoon. Generous butter was stirred in at the end, melting into rich yellow swirls throughout white porridge. The flavor was subtle, corny, and comforting, with butter providing richness, elevating simple grain into genuine pleasure. Grits cost almost nothing and could be prepared in minutes on the smallest burner. The smooth texture was gentle on elderly stomachs and required no teeth to enjoy. Seniors could cook large pots and reheat portions throughout the week, adding water to restore creaminess. In the South, grits carried cultural identity as strong as any food, connecting elderly cooks to generations who started every morning the same way. This breakfast remains in Southern kitchens, but few prepare it with the patience and butter quantities that once made it satisfying. Bread and milk bowl was the simplest possible lunch, yet it sustained seniors across America when appetites were small or budgets impossibly tight. This wasn't a recipe so much as a survival strategy, combining torn pieces of bread with cold or warm milk in a bowl, sometimes sprinkled with sugar. The bread softened in the milk, creating something between cereal and soup that required no cooking and minimal chewing. During the 1940s through the 1960s, many elderly folks turned to this combination when other foods seemed too heavy to prepare. The meal provided calcium from the milk and carbohydrates from the bread, offering basic nutrition when appetites had diminished. Some variations used stale bread specifically, since soaking in milk revived even the driest crusts. The dish cost mere pennies, making it accessible even during the leanest weeks before pension checks arrived. Children who visited grandparents often remembered seeing this humble bowl. Bread and milk bowl remains a powerful symbol of resourceful simplicity. Tomato sandwiches were summer's greatest gift to budget-conscious households across the rural South during the Depression and post-war years. When backyard gardens overflowed with ripe red tomatoes, families turned that abundance into simple meals costing almost nothing. The preparation required only thick slices of vine-ripened tomato, soft white bread, mayonnaise, and salt and pepper. The bread soaked up the tomatoes' juices, creating a soft texture that contrasted beautifully with the cool, sweet tart fruit. Seniors who grew up in working-class homes remember eating these standing over the kitchen sink, letting the juice drip freely. The sandwich represented self-sufficiency and home gardening when every dollar mattered. Mothers packed them for lunch when garden produce was plentiful, knowing they provided vitamins without spending precious grocery money. Today, heirloom tomato sandwiches appear on fancy restaurant menus, but nothing matches the memory of homegrown tomatoes between cheap white bread. Scalloped corn transformed canned cream corn into a custardy side dish with just a few pantry staples and 10 minutes of assembly before baking. Grandmothers combined cream corn with beaten eggs, crushed crackers, melted butter, and a splash of milk, then poured everything into a baking dish. The mixture puffed and set in the oven, developing a golden top while the interior stayed creamy and sweet. Some recipes called for adding diced onion or green pepper for texture, while others incorporated shredded cheese that melted into strings throughout the corn. The dish could be assembled ahead and refrigerated unbaked, then slipped into the oven alongside other foods at the last minute. Scalloped corn represented the kind of comfort food that made holiday meals feel complete, its simple ingredients combining into something greater than their parts. Children especially loved its sweetness and soft texture. Homemade gelatin from bones was the foundation of aspics and desserts before Knox and Jell-O reduced this ancient food to flavored powder in paper boxes. Cooks extracted gelatin by simmering bones and cartilage for hours until collagen dissolved into liquid that set firm when chilled. This natural gelatin had nutritional properties processed versions lacked, supporting joint health and aiding digestion. Savory aspics showcased cold meats in glistening clarity, while fruit desserts wobbled with homemade purity. Gelatin companies marketed convenience, packaging their product with artificial colors that transformed gelatin into children's party food rather than nourishment. Making real gelatin required bones that butchers stopped saving once demand disappeared and time modern schedules supposedly couldn't spare. Within 2 generations, the skill vanished so completely that most Americans don't realize gelatin comes from animals. The artificially green desserts dominating potlucks bear no resemblance to grandmother's rich creations. Fried cornmeal mush transformed yesterday's porridge into today's crispy breakfast treasure for seniors counting pennies. The night before, Cornmeal was cooked with water and salt until thick enough to hold a spoon upright, then poured into loaf pans and refrigerated until firm. Come morning, thick slices were fried in bacon grease until golden and crunchy outside while staying soft inside. Topped with molasses or maple syrup, fried mush delivered sweetness and satisfaction for under a dime. Seniors appreciated that mush could be made in batches, lasting through the week with daily frying. The soft interior required no teeth, making it ideal for elderly folks with dental troubles. Cornmeal was among the cheapest staples, bought in bulk for pennies per pound. This breakfast represented thrift transformed into pleasure, proving that poverty and deliciousness could coexist. The contrast between crisp exterior and creamy interior made each bite interesting, turning humble ingredients into morning celebration. Canned corned beef hash transformed from breakfast fare into a satisfying lunch when seniors needed something hot and filling without elaborate preparation. The can contained pre-mixed corned beef and potatoes that fried up crispy in a skillet with minimal attention, creating a meal that tasted far more substantial than its modest cost suggested. For those living alone, one can provide enough hash for a generous serving with perhaps some left for tomorrow. The preparation required only opening the can, scooping contents into a hot skillet, and pressing down until a golden crust formed. Some added a fried egg on top, though many ate it plain with ketchup. The salty, meaty flavor satisfied cravings for something savory and warm, especially on cold days. Canned hash kept indefinitely in pantries, ready whenever the mood struck. At roughly 35 cents per can, it represented remarkable value for protein and carbohydrates. This humble canned product sustained generations who understood that convenience and economy could coexist. Sliced bananas with mayo on white bread. This banana and mayonnaise sandwich is a bit of a wild card for sure, but keep an open mind because the South definitely does, which is where this interesting creation finds its origins. Typically, a lot of comfort food comes out of the southern USA. As you may have guessed, preparing this is as simple as taking candy from a toddler. Now I know what you're thinking. Bananas and mayo sounds worse than water and oil. However, there's a reason it comes into comfort food. All you need is a sliced banana, 2 slices of fresh bread, and a good spread of mayo. Maybe not the best you'll ever have, but what's the downside? Give this forgotten experiment a try and see if it's up your alley. Tomato aspic shimmered in molded rings on holiday buffets, its jewel-like appearance belying the simple preparation that required nothing more than combining tomato juice with gelatin. Grandmothers dissolved unflavored gelatin in cold water, then stirred it into heated tomato juice seasoned with a splash of Worcestershire sauce, a squeeze of lemon, and a pinch of celery salt. The mixture was poured into ring molds or individual cups and chilled until firmly set, then unmolded onto platters lined with lettuce leaves. Some versions included chopped celery, green onions, or olives suspended throughout the gel, creating visual interest when sliced. The aspic could be made days ahead, freeing precious time on Christmas Day for other preparations. Its tangy flavor provided bright contrast to rich holiday foods, while its wobbling presentation added retro elegance to buffet tables. Tomato aspic connected mid-century traditions with earlier generations who valued gelatin salads. Hand-churned ice cream was summer's greatest pleasure before Breyers and Häagen-Dazs convinced Americans that factory-produced desserts were superior. Families gathered on porches with wooden bucket churns packed with ice and rock salt, taking turns cranking until cream transformed into frozen velvet. The base was simple: cream, sugar, eggs, and whatever flavors the season provided. Fresh peaches in August, strawberries in June, vanilla beans scraped by hand. The texture was incomparable, dense and rich without the air that commercial ice cream pumps in to increase volume. Children fought for the dasher, licking every trace of ice cream from its paddles. The process took time and effort, but that was part of its value. Commercial ice cream companies marketed convenience and consistency, implying that homemade ice cream was unreliable and too much work. Their products contained stabilizers, emulsifiers, and corn syrup that extended shelf life while diminishing flavor. The ritual of family ice cream making vanished within decades. baked apple filled kitchens with cinnamon sweetness, while providing seniors with warm fruit requiring almost no preparation. A whole apple was cored, placed in a baking dish filled with brown sugar, butter, and cinnamon. Baked slowly until flesh softened and skin wrinkled, the apple emerged transformed, natural juices mingling with melted sugar into syrup pooling around the fruit. Eaten warm with a spoon, sometimes with cream, baked apple was dessert and breakfast combined. The dish cost nothing when apples were plentiful, requiring no watching during slow baking. Seniors could prepare it the night before and warm leftovers for quick morning meals. The soft flesh was gentle on sensitive stomachs and easy to eat without teeth. Baked apples provided fiber, vitamins, and psychological comfort of something smelling like home. This breakfast has disappeared from modern kitchens as instant options took over, yet baked apples once represented simple abundance requiring only patience and a working oven. Canned pork and beans delivered complete nutrition in a form that seniors living alone could heat and eat within minutes. The beans provided protein and fiber, while the sweet tomato sauce made them palatable without additional seasoning. A single can cost roughly 15 cents and contained enough beans for a satisfying lunch, often with leftovers for the next day. The preparation couldn't have been simpler. Open the can, pour into a saucepan, and heat until bubbling. Some seniors ate them straight from the pan to save washing dishes. The small pieces of pork fat added richness that plain beans lacked, though the quantity was never enough to feel heavy. Served with bread to soak up the sauce, pork and beans became a complete meal that stuck to the ribs through afternoon hours. The cans stacked neatly in pantries and lasted years without spoiling. For generations raised during the Depression, pork and beans represented security. This humble product never pretended to be fancy, but it fed millions who valued reliability. Crackling bread sandwiches combined two Southern traditions into one gloriously rich meal that wasted nothing from the family hog. Cracklings, the crispy bits left after rendering pork fat into lard, were stirred into cornbread batter before baking, creating bread studded with salty, crunchy pork pieces. Sliced thick and still warm, the crackling bread was eaten between pieces of regular bread or simply split and buttered. The flavor was intensely porky, salty, and satisfying in ways that plain cornbread could never match. This sandwich represented the waste-nothing philosophy defining rural Southern cooking during hard times. Every scrap of the pig found purpose, including the crispy remnants of rendering. Families made crackling bread during hog killing season, when lard production created pounds of cracklings. The bread kept well for days, becoming sandwich material for lunch pails and quick suppers. Seniors from rural areas remember the smoky aroma filling kitchens and the satisfying crunch of crackling studded bread. Marinated cucumber salad offered cool, crisp refreshment amid the heavy richness of typical Christmas fare, and grandmothers could prepare it in the time it took to slice vegetables and stir dressing together. Thin sliced cucumbers went into bowls with equally thin onion rings. Then a simple marinade of vinegar, sugar, water, and salt was poured over to cover. Some grandmothers added sour cream for a creamier version, while others preferred the clarity of a simple vinegar dressing that let the cucumber flavor shine. The salad improved as it sat, the cucumbers releasing their liquid while absorbing the sweet tart dressing, though it remained delicious even when assembled just minutes before serving. Dill was the traditional herb addition, its feathery fronds both flavoring the salad and making it look like something from a fancy restaurant. Marinated cucumber salad reminded everyone that not every dish needed to be rich and heavy to earn its place on the holiday table. Organ meat dishes were weekly staples before supermarkets convinced Americans that only muscle meat was worth eating. Liver, kidneys, hearts, and sweetbreads appeared regularly on family tables, providing nutrients that muscle cuts couldn't match. Liver alone contained more iron, vitamin A, and B vitamins than any other food, making it essential for growing children and pregnant women. Mothers pan-fried liver with onions, braised kidneys in wine, and stuffed hearts with savory breadcrumb mixtures. The flavors were intense and mineral-rich, satisfying in ways that bland chicken breasts never could. Meat packers found they could sell muscle meat at premium prices while grinding organs into pet food, so they marketed organ meats as undesirable. Within a generation, Americans forgot that their grandparents considered liver a treat. The nutritional wisdom of nose-to-tail eating disappeared, replaced by boneless monotony. Today, organ meats sell cheaply while supplements try to replace the nutrients they once provided. Cinnamon Toast transformed ordinary bread into sweet morning comfort for seniors craving something special without effort. Bread was toasted golden, then spread with soft butter while warm. A mixture of sugar and cinnamon was sprinkled generously over the buttered surface, heat melting everything into a sweet, spiced coating. The result was crispy, buttery, and fragrant with warmth filling small kitchens. This breakfast cost almost nothing since sugar, cinnamon, and bread were pantry staples. Seniors could prepare it in minutes using only a toaster, no pots to wash. The sweetness provided quick energy while bread delivered carbohydrates. Children and grandchildren who visited often requested cinnamon toast, creating moments of connection across generations. The simplicity was its virtue, requiring no skill yet delivering genuine pleasure. Cinnamon toast remains known today, but rarely prepared with the generous butter and thick sugar coating that once made it truly satisfying. Leftover meat sandwiches transformed Sunday's roast into Monday's practical lunch, stretching one cooking effort across multiple meals. Seniors living alone often prepared a small roast on weekends, knowing the leftovers would provide weekday lunches. The cold meat sliced thin and stacked between bread with mustard or mayonnaise created sandwiches requiring no additional cooking. For those on fixed incomes, this represented remarkable economy since the meat served double duty. The sandwiches traveled well for doctor's appointments, wrapped in wax paper and tucked into handbags. Some added lettuce or pickles when available, though many ate them plain. The flavors actually improved after a day in the refrigerator. This lunch reminded seniors of kitchens where waste was unthinkable, and every scrap found purpose. Leftover meat sandwiches proved that planning ahead created both convenience and economy. Cucumber sandwiches carried English Tea Party elegance into American homes, proving sophistication required only fresh vegetables. Thin cucumber slices were layered on buttered white bread, sometimes with cream cheese, crusts removed. The flavor was cool and refreshing, the cucumber's subtle taste enhanced by butter's richness. These appeared at ladies' luncheons and bridal showers where presentation mattered. The cost was negligible when cucumbers came from summer gardens. Children found them strange but learned to appreciate the cool freshness. The sandwich required careful assembly but no cooking. Seniors remember cucumber sandwiches as special occasion food. Glazed carrots became holiday fare when grandmothers transformed simple canned or frozen carrots with butter, brown sugar, and a splash of orange juice in just minutes on the stovetop. The carrots went into a skillet with butter that melted and foamed before brown sugar was sprinkled over, creating a syrup that clung to each piece as it reduced. Orange juice added brightness that balanced the sweetness, while a pinch of salt brought all the flavors into focus. The finished carrots glistened like amber jewels, their surfaces lacquered with caramelized glaze that made them irresistible to children and adults alike. Some grandmothers added a handful of raisins or a sprinkle of cinnamon for extra warmth, while others kept the recipe pure and simple. Glazed carrots could hold in a warm oven for extended periods without losing their appeal, making them perfect for unpredictable holiday timing. The dish proved that even the most humble vegetable could become something special with the right treatment. Homemade crackers were pantry staples before Nabisco and Keebler convinced Americans that only factory-produced crackers were worth eating. The process was simple, mixing flour with fat and seasonings, rolling thin, and baking until crisp. The results had character that commercial crackers lacked, with irregular shapes and flavors that varied by household. Southern cooks made beaten biscuits, pounding dough until it blistered into flaky layers. Jewish grandmothers produced matzo for Passover and everyday eating. Every culture had its cracker tradition passed through generations. Commercial manufacturers marketed uniformity and convenience, packaging identical crackers in moisture-proof wrappers that lasted months. Their products contained stabilizers that extended shelf life while homemade crackers stayed fresh for days. The simple pleasure of baking crackers disappeared as ovens were used less and packages opened more. Children grew up believing crackers only came in boxes. Liverwurst on rye carried old-world flavors into American lunchtime, offering rich, spreadable protein that seniors with European roots appreciated. The liver-based spread came in convenient tubes or wrapped logs that kept well in refrigerators for weeks. Spread thickly on dense rye bread, liverwurst created a sandwich with genuine substance and distinctive flavor that stood apart from blander lunch meats. For those living alone, the portion control was natural since you spread only what you needed. The strong, slightly mineral taste paired perfectly with sharp mustard and perhaps a pickle slice, creating complexity from simple components. Many seniors remembered this from childhoods when organ meats were everyday food. The combination of rye bread's earthy chew with liverwurst's creamy richness satisfied in ways that softer breads couldn't match. At roughly 25 cents for a log that made multiple sandwiches, liverwurst represented economical protein. This old-fashioned lunch has largely disappeared from modern tables. Brown sugar sandwiches offer deeper, more complex sweetness than their white sugar cousins, with molasses notes that made them feel almost sophisticated. Soft bread was spread with butter, then covered with brown sugar that didn't quite dissolve, creating pockets of crystalline crunch. The flavor was richer than plain sugar sandwiches, with caramel undertones that satisfied cravings more completely. Children preferred these when given the choice, finding the brown sugar's complexity more interesting. The butter melted slightly, mixing with sugar to create something approaching butterscotch in places. Families made these as treats when the sugar bowl was full and children needed quick energy or comfort. The sandwich assembled in seconds, requiring no cooking and minimal cleanup. Brown sugar lasted longer than white in humid climates, making it practical for southern pantries. Seniors remember these as special versions of everyday sugar sandwiches, the brown sugar signaling something slightly more indulgent. Fruit cocktail in syrup appeared in stemmed glasses at holiday tables, its colorful chunks of peaches, pears, grapes, and cherries requiring nothing more than opening cans and arranging the contents attractively. Grandmothers elevated this simple preparation by chilling the fruit thoroughly and serving it in their best crystal dishes that caught the light and made the fruit glisten. Some added a splash of maraschino cherry juice for deeper color, while others folded in fresh grapes or banana slices to stretch the canned fruit further. A dollop of whipped cream or a sprinkle of shredded coconut transformed the humble canned fruit into something that looked like it required real effort. Children loved the sweetness of the syrup and the variety of textures, while adults appreciated how the fruit cleansed the palate between rich holiday dishes. Fruit cocktail represented the convenience food era while still delivering genuine enjoyment at minimal cost. Meat drippings gravy was the foundation of Sunday dinners before gravy packets convinced Americans that pan drippings were waste to be discarded. After roasting any meat, cooks would pour off the rendered fat and browned bits, whisking in flour to create a roux that thickened into sauce. The gravy carried concentrated flavor from the meat itself, the caramelized proteins, the rendered fat, the juices collected during cooking. Nothing from a packet could approach this depth. Every grandmother knew the technique, adjusting flour and liquid by feel until gravy reached perfect consistency. Commercial gravy manufacturers marketed convenience, implying that homemade gravy was difficult and unreliable. Their products contained salt, thickeners, and artificial flavors designed to approximate what drippings provided naturally. Young cooks grew up never learning that gravy came from the roasting pan, never understanding that the fond stuck to the bottom was flavor waiting to be unlocked. Prunes and cottage cheese combined two foods that seniors ate for practical health reasons into a lunch that actually tasted pleasant together. The cottage cheese provided protein and calcium, while the prunes offered fiber and natural sweetness that made the combination more appealing than either alone. For those living alone, this lunch required no cooking and minimal preparation beyond spooning portions onto a plate. The prunes came dried in boxes that stored indefinitely, while cottage cheese kept refrigerated for reasonable periods. Many seniors ate this knowing it addressed digestive concerns that came with aging, finding that necessity and pleasure could coexist. The sweetness of stewed or softened prunes cut through the cottage cheese's mild tang, creating balance. Some added a sprinkle of cinnamon, though many ate the combination plain. The lunch felt virtuous without tasting medicinal. Though rarely seen on modern plates, prunes and cottage cheese once appeared regularly on senior lunch tables across America. Potted meat sandwiches turned tiny cans of processed meat spread into filling meals that sustained working families across America. The small, affordable cans contained finely ground meat mixed with seasonings and gelatin, creating a spreadable paste covering bread easily. The flavor was salty and vaguely meaty, with smooth texture that children found less intimidating than tougher cuts. Spread thick between slices of soft white bread, sometimes with mustard or pickle slices, potted meat made a complete sandwich for pennies. The cans required no refrigeration until opened, making them perfect pantry staples for homes without reliable icebox access. Families bought them by the case when money allowed, stockpiling affordable protein against uncertain times. The sandwiches appeared at picnics, in lunch boxes, and on dinner tables when paychecks ran thin. Children grew up eating them without realizing how clever their mothers were at stretching resources. Today, potted meat still exists in stores, a quiet reminder of survival cooking. Cranberry sauce from a can was the shortcut that grandmothers elevated with simple additions that made it taste homemade without requiring hours of simmering fresh berries. The jellied sauce slid from its can in a perfect cylinder, then was sliced into rounds or broken up with a fork depending on family preference. A splash of orange juice, some grated orange zest, and a pinch of cinnamon stirred in transformed the canned sauce into something that tasted like it came from a farmhouse kitchen. Some grandmothers added chopped walnuts or pecans for crunch, while others folded in diced apples or pears for texture and freshness. The enhanced sauce could be served immediately or chilled to firm up slightly, either way presenting beautifully in cut glass dishes. Grandmothers understood that shortcuts weren't shameful when the results were delicious, and the time saved could be spent with family. Whole milk cooking defined American cuisine before the dairy industry convinced consumers that skim and low-fat versions were healthier. Recipes called for rich, creamy milk that added body to sauces, tenderness to baked goods, and satisfaction to every dish it touched. Cream soups were actually creamy, custards set firm and silky, and bechamel had substance that bound casseroles into cohesive wholes. The fat in whole milk carried flavor and created textures that watery substitutes couldn't replicate. Dairy processors pushed reduced fat products because they could sell the extracted cream separately, essentially charging consumers twice. They marketed health benefits that later research contradicted, suggesting whole milk caused heart disease despite traditional populations thriving on full-fat dairy. Recipes written for whole milk failed when made with skim, leading cooks to abandon traditional dishes rather than seek proper ingredients. The rich comfort of real milk cooking became memory. Canned vegetable soup offered variety and nutrition for seniors who wanted something warm without making soup from scratch. Those cans contained mixed vegetables in savory broth that heated quickly and filled a bowl with colorful, comforting fare. For seniors living alone, one can provided a generous lunch portion, often with enough left for tomorrow. The soup cost roughly 15 cents and required nothing more than opening and heating. The soft vegetables were easy to chew, making this particularly appealing for those with dental concerns. Crackers or bread accompanied the bowl, soaking up broth and extending the meal. Many seniors kept several cans stacked in pantries, viewing them as reliable provisions against days when cooking felt impossible. The soup provided vitamins from vegetables that might otherwise be missing from simplified diets. This wasn't fancy eating, but it delivered genuine nourishment. Syrup sandwiches carried sweetness and energy to children who needed both during years when sugar was rationed and treats were rare. Sorghum, molasses, or cane syrup was drizzled generously over soft bread, sometimes topped with another slice, sometimes eaten open-faced. The dark, sticky sweetness spread across the bread like liquid candy, providing quick fuel for active children and tired workers alike. The flavor was deep and complex, far more interesting than plain sugar, with mineral notes and earthy undertones. Families kept jars of syrup in pantries throughout the South, using it as affordable sweetener when refined sugar cost too much. The sandwich required no cooking and assembled in seconds when hunger struck between meals. Children begged for these as treats, not realizing they were also survival food born from necessity. The syrup's thickness made the sandwich filling despite containing little actual nutrition beyond carbohydrates. Seniors remember the sticky fingers and satisfied smiles following every syrup sandwich. Candied sweet potatoes from canned yams became holiday tradition through a preparation requiring nothing more than opening cans, adding butter and sugar, and letting the oven do the work. Canned sweet potatoes were drained and arranged in baking dishes, then topped with generous amounts of butter, brown sugar, and sometimes miniature marshmallows that puffed and browned under the broiler. The natural sweetness of the potatoes intensified as the sugar caramelized around them, creating sticky glaze that made each bite memorable. Some grandmothers added orange juice or crushed pineapple for brightness, while others sprinkled pecans over the top for crunch. The dish could be assembled ahead and baked while the turkey rested, its sweet aroma mingling with savory smells to announce that the feast was nearly ready. Candied sweet potatoes proved that canned vegetables could anchor beloved holiday traditions. Tomato and mayonnaise sandwiches celebrated summer's bounty in the simplest form, requiring nothing more than ripe tomatoes, soft bread, and generous mayonnaise. For seniors with gardens or access to farmers' markets, this lunch represented free food transformed into genuine pleasure. The tomatoes were sliced thick and layered on white bread spread with mayo, then seasoned generously with salt and pepper. The combination seemed almost too simple, yet flavors married perfectly when tomatoes were at peak ripeness. The sandwich cost mere pennies when tomatoes came from the garden. Some added a crisp lettuce leaf for crunch, though purists insisted tomato and mayo needed nothing else. The juices soaked into the bread, creating a texture that was messy but deeply satisfying. This appeared on tables across America during tomato season, reminding seniors of childhood summers and simpler times when gardens fed families. Lettuce sandwiches proved that sometimes the simplest combinations provided the most refreshing satisfaction during hot summer months. Crisp iceberg lettuce was layered thick between slices of soft white bread spread with mayonnaise, seasoned only with salt and pepper. The crunch was remarkable, cool and fresh against the soft bread and creamy mayo. The flavor was subtle but clean, a relief from heavy winter foods when summer heat made rich meals unbearable. Gardens provided lettuce abundantly during growing season, making this sandwich essentially free for families who grew their own. The preparation took seconds, requiring no cooking during months when kitchen heat was unwelcome. Children ate these on summer afternoons, the cool crunch refreshing after hours of outdoor play. Adults appreciated the lightness when heavier sandwiches felt oppressive. Seniors remember lettuce sandwiches as seasonal treats, proof that abundance from the garden could be enjoyed simply. The sandwich celebrated summer's bounty without complication. Which cheap vintage meal would stretch your grocery budget the furthest today? Share your family's thrifty favorites in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so you never miss more budget-friendly wisdom from the past.